In this video, we're going to have a look at the ways that we can create lists in CRM. So when you create a list, it can be linked to either companies or contacts. We can also create one directly from this list area here. So let's start with companies and how we would add companies onto a list. In my view here, I can either add and remove columns to search for companies that I'm looking for. So in this case, I could want to search for all my customers that are located in Western Australia. I'm adding the state to my view, and then I can search within that for anyone that meets the WA criteria. And you can see here, I've got customers, I've got leads, I've got a mix of people here. I've also previously created a filter for my customers in Western Australia. So I can bring that one up and click here to add all of the records in my view. I can also deselect and reselect if I need to. And then using this Add to List button up here, this is going to show me the available lists that are already in CRM and linked to companies. So in this case, I don't want to use one of these lists. I want to create a new one. So I can type in here the name of my list. I can add a description if I want to, and then click Add. What that's done is added all of those records that I selected to that list. So that's done. We can now come into Marketing and Lists and open up the list I just created and see that it's there with those companies that meet the criteria. So we can also do the same thing from contacts. So for example, maybe I want to look up all of the contacts that have an email address and add them to a list so that I can market a newsletter to them. So in this case, I've already got the email column added to my view. I can click on this filter icon here and basically select all the records that aren't empty. So that means anyone with an email address. So that gives me 43 results. I can click here to select all of the records. I can also go and unselect myself because I'm probably not going to email myself out of this database, and do exactly the same thing as I did in companies. Click on Add to List and basically create a newsletter list like that. And we're done. It has now added all of those people that I selected to that list. We can come back into lists here and see the list that I just created and the 41 people that it's added to it. So quite straightforward. The other way that we can create a list is to come in here to Marketing and Lists and create something that's called a smart list. So what we did a second ago, we added companies and contacts that met a particular criteria into a list. What happens, for example, if a customer I have in WA moves to New South Wales or to Queensland, or somebody removes their email address from the system? So how can we make sure that our list remain up to date and accurate? So the answer here is a smart list. So what I can do is create a new list using the button up the top. I will call this customers in WA, and I'll call it a smart list to differentiate from the one that I had previously. Here, I need to select whether I'm linking this list to companies or contacts. So in this case, I want to use companies. I need to make sure that this is smart box here is ticked. So as soon as I've ticked that box, it's given me a filter box here. So this works the same way as filters in the main view when you're in companies and contacts where we set up criteria. So what we need to do here is click on this little edit button to tell CRM what criteria we want the members of this list to meet. So I want this to be customers in WA, and then I need to give the system the criteria. So first of all, I want the physical state that they're in to equal WA. I also want to make sure that I'm not emailing anyone who's no longer an active customer or their record has been deactivated in the system. So in here, I just want to check that the record is active. So I want that to be true. And I'm going to add a further check in here and say that I want to make sure that the people I'm emailing are all customers. So I don't want leads or prospects or opportunities or anything in there. So I want this to equal customer. So once I've added my criteria to the list, I can click OK. I can then add a description to this box if I need further text to explain my choices. I can then hit Save and Close. What I then get, you can see nobody's been added to my list at the moment. If I hit this Update Data button, what it's done is gone and searched for any company records that met the criteria that I put in. So if you remember, the criteria was that they had to be an active record, the physical address had to be based in WA, and they also needed to have customer in their life cycle stage. So what this means is once this list has been set up as a smart list, the system is going to maintain it for me. So if one of these companies is no longer a customer and doesn't have customer in their lifecycle stage field, they'll be taken off the list. If their state isn't WA anymore, they'll be taken off the list. Similarly, if I get a new customer on board that's based in WA, they will be added to the list. So this is a really good way of segmenting things so that they're set up and then you don't have to do any maintenance work in future. So we can basically come in and update the data to refresh the people that meet that criteria. So this will work if you relate a list to either a company or a contact. If you've also synced your system with either MailChimp or Campaign Monitor, you can quickly upload this list to either of those systems so that you can send out an email campaign of which the results will be synced back here to campaigns. So in summary, we can add people to a list by searching for records and using the Add to List button in other companies or in contacts. We can come into lists here and I'll show you the final way that we can add people into a list. So whether we're working with companies or contacts, we can open an existing record and at the top of the screen, we're going to see the list that that particular contact or company belongs to. So what I can do is add myself to an additional list. So I'll put myself back on the newsletter list, or I could remove myself from the newsletter list. And I can basically see at a glance which lists this contact belongs to. So it's exactly the same for companies. If I click on one of my customers in WA, we can see up the top here all of the different lists that they belong to, and I can go and add and remove them from particular lists. So I can do that quite easily from here. The other way I can quickly see which companies or contacts belong to a list is by adding the list column to my view. So if I click on any of the little gear icons as I hover across the columns up here, I can go and add the list column to my view. So what this is going to do when it shows up on the end here, I'll drag that to the middle so we can see here everyone who's attached to a list. So I've got 42 companies in the system in total. I can click on this filter button here and basically pick any value in here that's not empty, meaning they have to belong to a list. That gives me 27 people that are on a list. I can click here and basically see who's not on a list at a glance, and you can see I've got 15 people. So I could then go and select these and add them to a list if I wanted to. So that same technique works here in contacts. So I can basically click on the gear icon and go and add the list column to my view so that I can then sort by who is attached to which list. So I'll drag that into the center here, and what I might do is search for anyone that's on the grocery list. So typing in here, that shows me these customers. So I might say, right, I need to move all of these people into a different list. So I want to add them to a new list in the system. And you can see up here, I've also got a shortcut button. I could also go and remove them in bulk from a list. So I'll take them off that list that I just created. So we can do exactly the same thing in companies as we could then in contacts, as well as adding people to the list. We can also remove them from the list.